$40,000 ADU grant looks like it's coming back, and everybody is asking me when's the portal gonna reopen. But that is the wrong question, and I'm gonna explain why, and I'm gonna give you an even better piece of information. Because in this video, before the portals are reopened, I'm gonna tell you what you can do today to get your process started so that you have a budget, a scope of work, income proof, all the required steps already ready and registered with an entity that can apply for the grant before the grant application portal officially reopens. See, last year when the portals opened, it was chaos. Notifications weren't necessarily going out, sites were crashing, thousands of people were applying at the same time. And they were finding out the requirements in real time, like they needed a scope of work and proof of income. Some people didn't know that until they were in the application portal. So there were a lot of people who, by the time they were halfway through that application, the portals had already closed again. I was live streaming for hours. We were triaging with different people. And I gotta admit, it was pretty brutal. So I wanna set it up this year so as many of our audience members as possible who want that grant get the grant. Because it's a $40,000 grant. Even after the fees and tax implications, most people were netting something like $30,000, which is a huge impact on your project budget and the affordability of your ADU. So that's what we're all about here. I want to help as many of you as possible get the grant. If you like the information you get in this video, give it a like. I'm making this video so that you can prepare ahead of time and we can get as many of our audience members that grant money as possible. But you might be asking, Ryan, why all the urgency? Aren't there millions of dollars? The state has once again revised the budget to include $25 million in ADU incentives. And this tweet from the chair of the finance committee specifically says the grant. So we're pretty hopeful that the money goes to the grant, although that's still up to Calhfa. Having said that, that is down from the $50 million that they had agreed to earlier in the year. And I want to thank everybody who wrote in and thank Phil Ting for getting this $25 million back in the budget, because for a minute there, it looked like it was going to be a goose egg. But we got $25 million, which is great news. However, if that goes to a $40,000 grant, you can do some basic division. 25 million divided by 40,000 is 625 grant awards. Even if there's a few more than that because there are cancellations from last year's, you're not going to see thousands of grants awarded. And check the view count below this video. I bet it's already in the thousands because I released this video early to members of my private community, Backyard Breakthrough. If you want to find out information first instead of finding out behind thousands of other people, there's more information about Backyard Breakthrough in the video description below. Last year, the grant applications had a lot of requirements. You could work with a lender, and that lender would have to do a credit check and get you loan rates, and you'd have to agree to those loan terms. Or you could work with an entity like HPP Cares or CCEDA, and you would bring the financing to it, but you would still need to provide a scope of work to show that it was a realistic project. You would need to bring proof of income. You would have other elements that you needed to bring to that application process. If you wait until the application portal opens to find that stuff out, you're going to be behind everybody who watches this video. If you're curious about last year's requirements, you can download a digital download of a list of the requirements for HPP Cares from the first part of 2022. But before you do that, it's important to understand the requirements have changed, right? Everything has evolved since 2022, and that information is outdated. It is merely to illustrate the types of things that were required in 2022. It is not a list of things that are required in 2023. But hey, I wrote to HPP Cares and asked, hey, what can people do if they want to work on their grant applications right away? And this is the answer I got from Catherine at HPP Cares. Once the portal reopens, we encourage you to submit your application through the homepage, hppcares.org. Prior to doing so, take a moment to explore our grant access page, which provides essential information on the required documentation for a successful application with our agency. I'll include these links in the description below the video. Catherine also flagged several specific things. I'll let you take a screenshot of this for everybody who plans on applying through HPP Cares. Now, I don't want to put words in HPP Cares' mouth, so check out the link in the video description below to see their landing page, read what they said. There's a video embedded on that you can watch, and it's the audio recording of a webinar where they kind of talk about waiting lists and people who already applied last year. There's a place where you can sign up to get notifications directly from them. check all that out. But on the whole, my impression is that they're adopting a more cautious approach, and they want Calhfa to release more official information before they turn around and start taking applications again. That's my read. After last year's experience, I think if you wait until the portals reopen, it might be too late. And so I wanted to dig a little deeper. So I wrote to CCEDA. That's the entity that processed the second largest number of grant applications last year, to my knowledge. So I got Ari, the founder of Homeplex. He's coming on the show to explain what you can do today before the Calhfa funding gets restored and before the application portals officially reopen, specifically for the ADU grant. Now let's welcome Ari to the show and learn exactly what we can do today to prepare for the ADU grant and some other opportunities. Ari, how you doing?
Good afternoon, Ryan. We're great over here. Thank you.
Cool. So tell me what Homeplex does and what you did with the grant last year.
So what we do outside of our relationship with CCEDA is really focus on helping homeowners navigate this complex project of building a small home, an ADU.
Cool. And so with that Homeplex hat on, how did you get involved with the grant last year?
So CCEDA got involved in the grant program last year to help the community. They found that one of the largest challenges was a lot of these homeowners needing additional technical assistance that they just were not equipped to provide internally. So while they're great at, managing grants and doing community advocacy, where they really needed was a subject matter expert to come in and really hold the hands of a lot of the applicants, especially those that were very early on in the process.
Yeah. So to explain that another way, it's like CCEDA is one of these organizations, like a nonprofit, that allowed people to get the grant without requiring a loan, a specific kind of loan.
Correct.
And then Homeplex and you come in and help provide some of the technical expertise to bring homeowners up to speed to use that grant.
Yeah, and even a lot of the hand-holding in the application process itself. So there's a lot of things that the homeowner has to provide in order to qualify for the grant, many of which, or at least a few of which, were very challenging. So we got to help hold their hand throughout that process.
Yeah, that's why you're the perfect person to talk to right now, because we've got another $25 million in the pipe, and we've got a lot of questions about what we can do to get prepared for that. So, I mean, first of all, do you know, is that $25 million guaranteed to go to the grant program again?
You know what, Ryan? I would love to say it's guaranteed, but it's been guaranteed a few times the last year, so.
Yeah, I'm getting tired.
Exists anymore when it comes to government and state programs, but I will say it's looking very promising. So the last thing that I understand is it was actually passed by the legislator, and we're really just waiting on the guidance from Calhfa, the state organization administering the grant.
Yeah, and ultimately, if homeowners want to stay informed, they can go to Calhfa's website. They can read for themselves what's going on. But if they want to get a little ahead, if the grant comes back, do we know if it's got the same eligibility standards, the same requirements to apply, or is that also in flux?
The only one I think that's a question mark at this point is the income requirements. There has been some talk about potentially lowering the income requirements. I believe Assemblyman Ting had mentioned a potential lowering of that. So we just don't know at this point. We're just waiting on Calhfa's guidance. In the meantime, we've been using the current limits in terms of qualifying potential applicants with CCEDA for that grant.
Yeah, but that kind of means that you expect the other requirements in the application to be similar.
If somebody really wants a chance of getting this grant at this point, I would say apply as early as possible. If you wait until the portal opens, it will most likely be too late, because there are a lot of organizations, CCEDA and many others, that are processing applications and have a backlog of applicants. So, go to CCEDA or another one of the participants in the program. Make sure to apply now. Make sure to have all your documentation in place. I will say the biggest challenge we found is one of the main requirements is the state wants to make sure that the 40,000 is actually going to build an ADU. So they have a lot of requirements around that, probably the most important being that the person actually has a budget. And you'd be surprised the kind of budgets that we've seen coming in from writing on the back of a cocktail napkin. And that's just not going to fly with CCEDA, because they need to make sure that there's a third party that has provided a budget. So in some cases, if people have already completed their design or they're even in permitting, it's time to go to a contractor or many contractors. We recommend at least 2 or 3 bids to compare apples to apples, but there are no apples to apples if you don't have a design,
Yeah.
right? Bake me a cake. Is it a sheet cake for a wedding or is it a cupcake? Right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people aren't there yet. They don't have a design done. And they're trying to hit up these contractors saying, hey, I need a budget for this grant. And the contractors, if you're that early in the process, they're not going to rush out. They're very busy.
You can't just be like, I'm building an ADU. You need to have put a little project together.
Absolutely no. I mean, in terms of all the other requirements, I don't think anything's changing, or at least I haven't gotten a sense of that from CCEDA, and I don't believe CCEDA has heard any different. The only thing I know is what everybody else knows, what they saw in the LA Times, and what they've read in terms of what people are trying to do with the program. I know last year they had the working groups, and I know some of the changes that they were looking at were based on the working groups. But at this point, I probably know as much as you do.
Well, that's good. Okay, so knowing that there were a bunch of requirements last year, and you were the guy who helped people figure those out and actually hold their hand through the application process, is there something that they can do today, even though the grant application is not, there's no grant application portal yet, but despite that, is there something they can do today to start getting prepared if they're interested in that grant money?
Absolutely. I mean, we've had continuous flow from CCEDA of applicants that need help. So CCEDA continues to take applications. They're also helping, as are we, in other potential programs. So a lot of the cities, counties have their own programs, as you know about. So the state grant program is great, but there's other incentive programs as well. So I know CCEDA is really taking a more of a holistic approach, saying, let's look at this individual homeowner and what they're trying to accomplish and see how we can help them. If they qualify for the grant and the grant's available, great, for the Calhfa grant. If there's other local grants, like I know you're very familiar with the Napa forgivable loan program, San Diego's got theirs. There's a lot of cities, Alameda, that are now adding more and more incentives to build ADUs and or rent ADUs to lower income renters.
What you're saying is if somebody goes to the CCEDA website today, you use the word application. It's not an application for the grant. It's an application. It's like
Correct.
to get help building an ADU.
That's exactly right.
And so they can go and start that process. And if at any point they qualify for a cool incentive, be it the Calhfa grant or something else, then they're going to be in a place where you flag that for them.
Absolutely. And that's why CCEDA has been encouraging people to keep applying, because they're continuing to not only look at existing programs, but also working with different cities and municipalities and counties on even potentially creating programs. So the more demand that CCEDA is seeing in a given area, the more leverage they have to go to that city or that county and say, look, we have all these applicants that qualify, let's say, under LMI restrictions, or that are willing to rent out to LMI low, moderate income tenants. So it is filling out an application with CCEDA is applying for the Calhfa grant if and when it becomes available, but also other incentives that may be available or even come available in the future.
Okay. And it's free to sign up? It's
Absolutely, yeah. So you register on the CCEDA website, adu.cceda.com, and it takes you through that application process. And you'll notice that the application process they have looks a lot like a loan application. Often people get confused thinking, oh, am I applying for a loan here? You're not applying for a loan, but the requirements for these different grants are very, very similar, looking at income, looking at assets. So it is important to have a complete application.
People were calling me last year and saying, hey, are they running a credit check on me when I apply through CCEDA?
Not at all.
Okay. So they can provide all that information to CCEDA, read the terms and conditions on CCEDA's website, but that kind of gets you in the pipe with an organization that exists to help you get some of this funding, whether it's through Calhfa or another program.
Exactly. That's exactly.
If you've been taking applications this whole time, or if CCEDA's been taking applications this whole time, presumably you've got a list of like several hundred people who are already intrigued.
CCEDA's had a few thousand people that have applied over the last year. But that being said, some are more proactive than others. So when you ask the question, what can people do? They can be very active. I would really treat it as if they're applying for a loan. Like if you're with a bank and they're going to ask for a lot of stuff, you got to provide it if you want to qualify for that loan. It's very similar because the requirements that the state has on CCEDA requires all that information. So they're required to collect that. They're required to validate it. They're required to look at tax returns, make sure the people that are applying are really on the deed. One of the things that was confused quite a bit in the past was around the income requirements and being able to apply, for example, with one owner. And just to be really clear, so we've we've seen a lot of people get really far down the process to then at the very end, when everything's getting validated, find, hey, both the husband and wife are on the deed and they both live in the house, yet you're only counting one of their incomes. And with both of their incomes, it exceeds the limit. So, one of the things people should really understand is that if there are two people on the deed and those two people live in the house, both of their incomes will be counted. If one person's on the deed, and let's say it's a married couple, let's say a husband inherited from his parents, and the wife and the husband live in the house, only the person's on the deed's income matters. So that's one point of clarification. We got a lot of questions and a lot of confusion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I contributed to the confusion, right? Because last year we had another entity that was interpreting that part of the process differently, and so they explained, hey, you don't disqualify yourself, and that all is very reflective of how this process evolves. And there's a lot of different steps in a very complicated application and eligibility process where the details matter a lot, and working with an entity to get all of your details in a row so that you get your award letter, you get that money, that's really important. And that's what they can do by checking out the link that we're going to put in the video description below.
Yeah. And CCEDA's grant advocates that are helping through the process, they're as active as the applicants. So there's often applicants that are extremely active, in which case the CCEDA advocates are extremely active. There are others they have to chase down, and for those, they're not going to be as responsive. So if you want that responsiveness from CCEDA, I just encourage everybody to be as active as they can be.
There you go. You heard it here. Start early, be active, and you've got an advocate who's going to help out. Just to be super clear, we're going to put links to CCEDA and Homeplex and another entity in the description below. If people want to do what you're saying to prepare for the grant, they should go to the CCEDA form. If they want the help that you've described throughout the video, they could go directly to Homeplex. Additionally, yeah, okay. That's just to be super clear, because I don't want people coming back and be like, Ryan, you said this was a grant application. It's what we're talking about is different entities that can help you, and one of them, CCEDA, also happens to be in a perfect position to take that same information and apply for the grant for you.
Well, exactly. And that is, I think, one of the key differences is CCEDA, you're going to be applying for that Calhfa grant, but you're also going to be applying for any other incentive in your area.
Nice. All right. Thank you very much for your time, for bringing some clarity to this process, which people don't like committing to what's about to happen in the future. And it's been very nice talking to you about ways that people can get ahead and get into the future planning stage for this grant opportunity, potentially.
And Ryan, I have asked my staff to kind of monitor the How to ADU group. So if there are questions asked, our staff will be available to jump in and answer specific questions.
So if you're interested in ADU incentives, don't delay. Check out all the links in the video description below, and let's build some housing. I hope a lot of you get that grant money.